Welcome to a new series of videos called Grow With Me. At least that's what I'm calling it for now. We'll see if that title sticks, if it resonates, or if I need to change it. Maybe it just doesn't work. But the idea for this series is coming to you on video to discuss questions that you have brought to me. Over the years, I have collected questions from a lot of different readers and viewers of my the videos that I provide, and I haven't done well in responding to those. And so, right up front, I apologize that that is something that I didn't get around to doing because I wanted to do it. And I want to start this series so that I can take time to take a question and consider possibilities in the scenario, but bring it to a larger audience. So, anybody who's viewing this video that incorporates principles, both spiritual principles, healing and growth principles that may be helpful for more people than just the person who asked the question. I have to state this disclaimer because I am a therapist. This series of videos or any of my blogs, articles, videos, any of the other content that I do, none of it should replace your own work with a therapist, and none of it should be considered specific advice for a specific person. What I plan to do is share the general concept with the question and explore some possibilities around that type of scenario, and then explore options of things that could be helpful for steps of growth or paths toward healing for potentially for the person who's asked the question as well as for the larger audience. Today's question has to do with forgiveness. Forgiveness is a topic filled with different interpretations and meanings and messages. In today's question, there's a lot of room for different messages as well. So, what I'm going to do is share the highlights of the question and possibilities around interpretations and messages, and then ideas of ways to move forward with that. And I hope that's helpful. So, the question is, what is the difference when someone says, I choose to forgive you, versus just, I forgive you? This person had an experience with a relative, and the relative didn't want to dig things up. They didn't want to talk about things that had happened in the past, but had said, I choose to forgive you. And the difference there in saying, I choose to forgive you versus I forgive you can carry some weight and meaning for the person who's hearing it. And that weight and meaning may be very different than the weight and meaning from the person who's saying the words. So, what could be happening here? The question also asked or mentions that it just doesn't feel good when someone says they're choosing to forgive you instead of just forgiving you. Um, so let me play out a possible scenario. This is very limited information, and again, this is not specific advice by any means. But in my mind, what I go to initially is, let's say you've had a relationship that's been strained with someone. And in this case, we're going to stick with a relative. So, father, mother, son, daughter, cousin, a relative. The relationship has been strained. Maybe there's been tension, there's been arguments in the past, and it just hasn't been going well. At some point, another person comes to you and says, nope, you know what? I don't want to talk about the past at all. That's in the past. I don't want to drudge things up and bring it up, but I choose to forgive you. Okay. Tone of voice could indicate some weight and meaning for that person. By the way, it's always best to get clarity by asking them with a curious nature. What did, can you tell me more about that? What does that mean to you? Because your meaning and hearing it, like I said, could be very different in the meaning that they have in saying it. So in the scenario, let's say that person is doing their own personal growth work and development in some way. And so they have come to a place where they realize, you know what? It's just not been fruitful to try to have these conversations that I've tried to have in the past. So I'm going to choose not to have those conversations at all. I'm going to choose not to drudge it up, but I want to be making choices that matter to me and that align with my values. So I choose to forgive you. Maybe in the back of their mind, they feel like, you know what? I don't even really, it's difficult. I don't feel like things have been resolved. I still feel hurt and pain, but I want to move forward. So I'm making a choice to move into this process of forgiveness. One possible scenario. Another possible scenario. Um, they're maybe not necessarily in the same growth path. I have a growth path that I teach in the Cultivate Together community. Blah, 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 blah. And they find it challenging to know what to do in that scenario. So in that case, they don't want to dredge up the past because they don't know how to deal with it, maybe. They don't want to deal with it. Maybe they're um, just don't have the skill set or the willingness or the desire to deal with all the things that have been in the past. But it could also be like in the last scenario, they don't want to move into that same conversation with someone because it doesn't feel like it could be fruitful. They may not have the skill set or the desire to work through some of those past things with you. So, do you see how there could be several different ways of approaching it just in the ideas that I have in my mind, which could be completely different than the real case scenario? But let's say that person is just not able or ready to deal with the things that have come up in the past, and their choice to say, I choose to forgive you, could also be something like, I'm just going to make a decision that helps me stay in a place of not dealing with the discomfort of more distress and more challenges in the conversation. So I choose to forgive you. In that mindset, may include something like, let's just move forward. We're not going to deal with the past at all. And that can be healthy in some scenarios and unhealthy in other scenarios. So there's just a lot more to consider in that scenario. And that's just a couple ideas of the ways that the or reasons that I think that that kind of message may be broached. You may have other ideas, and I would actually love to hear you share as long as the comments stay respectful, kind. You can disagree, but have respectful comments. If there's anything that is harsh or accusing to anybody else or mocking or criticizing in some way, I'm not going to keep those comments up there. My goal in my conversations and the content that I produce is to focus on what helps us grow and develop who we are, how we show up in the world, and how we get to experience more life with God and who He is. So just keep that in mind in the comment section. But I would love to hear your different thoughts and what comes to mind for you when you hear someone say, I'm not going to bring up the things from the past, but I choose to forgive you. So, on the other side, the person hearing this, that can feel like, ooh, they're choosing to forgive me. Man, what's so bad about me that they have to add the word choose versus just being in a space of, I forgive you? That may consider that that may be tied to long patterns of shame and feelings of badness about who we are as a person, because when a message goes straight to that place of feeling like, oh man, what's wrong with me, why couldn't they do this, or even into a place of expecting someone else to say things a specific way, um just a signal. Pay attention to it and consider, is there something else going on inside of me, or what is it that's going on inside of me? Is it shame? Is it past experiences where I was judged, condemned, where I was treated in some way that caused pain that's still there inside of me? And you don't have to know, but just that step of reflection and consideration can help pause and slow those thoughts down. And then we can bring those to God and say, now I want you to speak to this. Help me connect to you and the way you see me. And I'm wrestling for the word in my mind, because I feel like the things that people say get so connected to that meaning and the message about who we are, and it's like locked in and messed up and tangled together. And the more experiences we've had like that, the more tangled that mess is, or the more layers, however you want to look at that. And so the word that's coming to mind in asking for prayer and asking God to help us in that place is to untangle, to remove the layer, to detach it a little bit so that the meaning that's adding more shame, bringing up something that's already inside of us and bringing that to the surface and making it worse, that's starting to get like this, can be detached and separated so that we can remain present with ourselves and what we need, and then present with the other person and what's happening for them. So I'm going to pause this video at a shorter time frame than what I do when I do my live meetup videos, um, because I know that I can kind of bring a lot of concepts into a short time frame here. And I want to pause and see if this information is even helpful, if this makes sense to you on the different scenarios and maybe what you've experienced, just considering how does this apply to me? So, what are the meaning and the messages that are coming through to me? And then, is there truth in that? See, you know what? I said I was going to pause because I was just going to carry you through next steps. And that's kind of what I tend to do. But I am going to pause there. In our group, in Cultivate Together, we have a next steps call once a month where you can bring a challenge and we can talk it through, and I can process with you, helping you kind of make decisions and do some of the self reflection and kind of figure out your next steps in whatever situation. So I'm going to keep this limited, rein myself in, and say, in this scenario, what resonates and what do you think could be helpful for you when you consider meaning and messages in slight variations of a word choice, what that other person might mean that's very different from what you mean. I hope this video is helpful. If so, please go hit the like button and leave a comment, something like that. If it is, that helps other people find the content too. So that's super helpful. And it's always helpful for me to know what's resonating with you and how can I improve the messages so that I'm providing content that's helpful and useful. As we start this new series, what did I call it? Grow with me. That's what we're calling it. Take care.